Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Mosley here. I'm joined with Dr. Robertson to talk about human resources.
Hi, glad to join.
Yeah, even though it says Doctor Who, which is one of my favorite TV characters. So that's cool.
Every time I go in, no matter if I change it, it reverts back.
And that's all right. So with HR, they're going to help assist in certain things like recruitment, legal compliance, safety and health issues, labor relations, and all that. And it's pretty important because without a solid HR, you can end up getting in a lot of trouble real easily. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on.
Yeah, they are our in-house experts on things.
Yeah.
With regards to either getting employees or keeping employees and the things we have to do to make sure that we're treating them fairly and legally. They're also the ones that are tasked with going out there and finding employees for us. They're the ones that are going to do things like make sure that our salaries are still competitive or put together packages to try and recruit people. The HR plays an important role in what they do.
Yeah, and HR is not just HR. Every manager really in some form participates in human resource activities, whether it's scheduling, discipline, determining after HR weeds out all the applicants, who they actually are going to hire for their positions, what requirements they need to have.
Right. If I'm the line manager, I understand the skills and the attitude and the abilities that I need to fill this position. More so than someone who's sitting, maybe on the other end of the property and dealing with other things. That the line manager understands the needs of the position, so they play a role in that decision.
Yeah, and as we talked about a little bit early, the HR personnel, they assist by doing all those things we talked about, but also helping to maintain like appropriate standards of work-life quality and really making sure that ethical business practices and policies are in place. Because if an employee has an issue with something, typically one of their first stops is going to be HR.
Right.
So it's important for HR to understand all the rules, the laws and regulations that really affect their particular industry that they're in.
Yeah, just because someone works for a company doesn't mean that their boss can do anything to them they want. This is a professional relationship, and HR helps define what the boundaries of that relationship are.
Yeah, and they even help out with things such as the job descriptions, because not having that list of tasks that an employee will be doing can make your search for new employees that much more difficult. The more specific you can kind of be when it regards to a position can help clarify or rule out people from even bothering to apply for your particular company.
Yeah, the job description tells you what you're going to be doing. We're looking to hire a cook to work 8-hour shifts, or we're looking to hire a housekeeper to clean X number of rooms, and that will be responsible for, dealing with laundry and all. It is the specifics of what the job is, because again, when we hire someone or recruiting people, we need to be specific on what we're hiring them to do. There's nothing worse than being hired for a job and then getting in and finding out that it's something else, and that's how you create dissatisfaction, and it contributes to turnover.
Well, and that's a pretty good point there. So if I'm going to hire a chef, well, I'm probably going to put down must be able to stand on their feet for 8 hours plus a day.
Yeah.
Be able to lift 45 pounds, right? And that's just because if you're helping to put away stuff that's being delivered, or you have to grab a case of steak or whatever, right? It's not exactly light.
Yeah, and that in the job specification, while slightly different than the job description, is like this describes the ideal candidate.
Yeah,
the candidate is going to have the candidate is going to have a 4-year degree. The candidate's going to have 5 years of experience. The ideal candidate's going to is going to have experience in this field or that field.
Yeah.
So the description, the specification are slightly different.
Yeah. But really important to nail. So we have some selection tools, and Dr. Robertson kind of hit on this when it came to like specifications, but there's things called bona fide occupational qualifications.
Your bona fides.
Bona fides, right? And those are things that are judged to be reasonably necessary to perform all the tasks within the job. So it might be language skills. Well, if I'm hiring a director of HR or a head housekeeper, what kind of language skills do you think I'm going to require them to have?
I would say that, depending on where you're at, being bilingual, being able to speak the language of the people who are doing the housekeeping is going to be important. So depending on where you are, I would say that Spanish or possibly Chinese or even Vietnamese could be very useful things to know.
Yeah. Well, in each area, it seems to have different like imports of like J1 workers come in.
Yeah.
So it's always important. There might be a minimum age requirement.
And this is, when we talk about bona fides, that means these are the things that are required for the job. So like if I want to hire a housekeeper, I can't say must be Vietnamese, because that is discriminatory. You can't do that. But I can say must be able to speak Vietnamese. Yeah. Because that may be an actual requirement of the position. So that's a bona fide or a bona fide qualification.
Yeah, they might have to have certain licensing. So if you're the head chef at a restaurant, what kind of certificate might you need to have?
I can't say that this position is for a man only, but I can say this position requires the ability to lift 100 pounds. So it's
true. Or, hey, you need to be manager ServSafe certified, right?
Right.
To be in this position.
Yeah, that's a specific qualification for the job.
Yeah. Employment applications, and this one here, just if somebody's not following the directions, or if it's big gaps or something are left, it kind of makes it easier. The interviews.
Yeah. It's a tool to help
weed out.
Yeah, weed out and find the right person.
Yeah. Is it 100% right? No. Somebody could completely tank their application, but they might have been the best candidate. You never know.
And there's also, it's part of the selection process. It's not the totality of it, because I've worked with people who look great on paper, and then when you get them in the work environment, the experience is very different.
Yeah. That comes into play with background checks.
Yeah. It's another thing that HR does.
Yeah. And that's, anytime somebody's going to be handling, I don't want to say anytime, but certain positions, you're going to really want to dig deeper and make sure that you're hiring somebody who's trustworthy and everything else. Their references. Yeah,
you want to check the references and make sure that they actually are the person they say they have the skills they have. And then also in certain positions, as you alluded to, there are situations where as an employer, we could be held liable for negligent hiring.
Yeah.
So if I am let's say that I have a daycare or childcare provided on the hotel premises, for instance, and I hire someone who has a record as a child predator, and something happens, I am responsible for that. I should have checked on that. I should have done a background check.
Yeah, because your company's name is going to be right there in the headlines with anything else as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, and you just don't want it to happen.
No. You got to protect not just your employees, but your guests as well. Yeah. There's some legal things that come into play when that help out, such as like the Civil Rights Act, ADA, making reasonable accommodations, not discriminating people, right? Some things that seem so obvious now, but until 1964, you could get away with discriminating people based on race, color, sex, religion, all this good stuff.
Right. It goes back to the thing, is this an actual requirement for the job? Do I need to be a member of this religion in order to perform this job? And if the answer is no, then you can't then it's not a selection criteria. It's
Yeah.
not legally allowed.
Right. So a few terms that you may have heard of. I believe Georgia's an at-will state, if I'm not mistaken, where you are you can hire any employee as they choose and fire any employee as they choose with or without cause at any time, which also means that you can pretty much quit at any time.
Yeah, there is a flip side of this, and your employer doesn't like telling you this part of it, but you don't have to give notice. It's nice to give notice, but it just like they can fire you when they want to their benefit, you can walk away.
Yeah.
You are not forced to work for them.
Now, a little advice though, don't burn any bridges. Very small community, right? Just, I mean, it feels good in the moment, right? But if you can give a notice, do it. And if they decide, be wary that the employer might decide, well, okay, well, fine, we're done with you, right? Because people have emotional responses sometimes.
Yeah, well, all I'm saying is that just be aware that the at-will employment typically favors the employer, but it also does give the employee additional freedoms. And so, yeah, just like they can deny you employment at any time, basically for any reason, that cuts both ways. That you can leave for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they can't, because a company will often say, oh, well, you have to give 2 months notice or 6 weeks notice or something like that, because it makes it easier for them. But actually, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to give notice. So this goes both ways.
Yeah, there might be situations where you actually sign a contract.
Right, that's different.
You sign a contract, that's different. Even in an at-will state, a contract is still a legally binding agreement, which means you need to know it.
It binds both parties. So
yes, you need to know it and they need to know it. So again, they tend to favor the person doing the hiring because they're the ones who make the agreement.
Yeah.
But
that's why it's called a negotiation when you get hired. Is like, you can say I'm not comfortable with that, and you negotiate. Maybe they accept it, maybe they don't.
Yeah.
I would say right now, given the employment environment we have with the labor shortage, negotiate everything.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not asking for better pay
or better conditions,
or guaranteed time off, things of that nature, just think about it. All right. Let's get down to some legal issues. And these are things that every HR should pretty much inform their employees about. Typically, the first one's sexual harassment. There's going to be training that's going to occur. And sometimes that training is done based on just being a CYA. And that
cover your bottom.
Yeah. So know the definitions of everything that's going on, what the regulations are, policies. Sexual harassment shouldn't occur in the workplace, period. And that's unwelcome sexual advances, requests for favors, verbal or physical conduct that is in a sexual nature.
Yeah, legally there are two different types of sexual harassment. There's what's called quid pro quo, which is do this for me, I'll do that for you.
Yeah.
And so that's a straight up exchange. That's pretty easy to recognize. The other type of sexual harassment in the workforce that we talk about is a hostile work environment, where through intimidation or hostility or coercion, we make someone not be able to do their job because of a hostile environment.
Yeah. So you should have pretty clear policies and procedures when it comes to this. And this is the part that really, you got to drive home. You got to be consistent.
Right.
With your handling. The Family Medical Leave Act, right? Pretty much this applies to hotels that employ 50 or more staff and provide about 12 weeks of unpaid leave to an employee for childbirth, adoption, fostering, serious illness of an employee or immediate family member.
And as an employee, again, your employers, always keep this in mind, as an employee, your employers are looking out for their best interests, and HR is kind of in that middle position where they're working with both sides. But as an employee, you're entitled to 12 weeks a year off to tend to things like the birth of a child, the adoption of a child, a serious illness, or a serious illness of a family member. If you have personal things to attend to, you're legally out, you're legally allowed to take 12 weeks of unpaid leave.
Yeah. The key there, though, is the unpaid part,
Yeah.
too.
And
Yeah.
HR, part of what HR does is they help you coordinate that.
Yeah. Fair Labor Standards Act, that one was kind of huge. You can thank your labor unions for some of this stuff. Establish a minimum wage, overtime work rates. It used to be, well, you just work whatever we want you to work, right? Equal pay regardless of gender. Obviously, America's still working on that. Exception for minimum wage, which anybody in the hospitality field who has ever served knows about that.
Yeah, for management positions.
Oh yeah, management positions when you are salary. That's
Yeah.
another thing you can negotiate too, though. Like, all right, sure, this is my salary, but if I end up working more hours, that I end up making less per hour than somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say that I made a mistake when I was a chef at one point. I was running a restaurant in a national park, and I was working a lot of hours. And one day I'm in the dish pit washing dishes, and just did the math and realized I was making less per hour than my dishwasher was.
Yeah. It's when you start going, all right, well, maybe I'm not going to be doing all these hours.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't. You can't work yourself. Executive employees, those who are, well, managing everybody else, right? All this stuff here kind of fits in. Compensation, it's not just pay, is it?
No, there are lots of things that fall under the category of compensation. So it's your benefits also. And typically we spend, maybe 30 to 50% of the cost of an employee is actually in benefits. And that's part of the compensation. It can be things like retirement. It can be your medical benefits, or all sorts of things that fall under this category.
Yeah.
And also it's as part of compensation, it's HR is responsible for dealing with legal issues as far as taxation and stuff. So
Yeah.
withholding, Social Security, your what is it when you're injured on the job?
Well,
Workman's comp, all those things.
all those things really, if you don't keep track of like all those things that you have to pay out. And this is where, if you get hired to be an independent contractor, you really got to watch out for it too.
Right.
Because you're all of a sudden in charge of all that. They're just cutting you a check.
Yeah.
For services rendered. That's not an actual paycheck. So, obviously employee evaluation, right? And that's that you're evaluating work performance and nothing else.
Right.
Right. Disciplining, dress standards, all that stuff, right? And firing people. A lot of times it's all about just making sure that you cover your bases here.
Yes.
So recruiting. External, obviously, that's getting people from outside of your company to try to come on in, right? It used to be, we had these weird things back in the old days called newspapers.
What?
I know. And you would, if you were looking for a job, you would open up the newspaper, go to the help wanted section, and you'd find everybody who's hiring. But now there's so many different websites out there, Indeed, Web Recruit, all sorts of things out there, right? Sometimes people still put a sign up, help wanted, right? They might come to the school like they do here. At least once a month, there's a job fair going on. Whether you actually realize there's one going on or not, it's in the campus center.
And also, we do a lot of recruiting. One of the best ways that we get employees is always through our current employees. That, so there's an internal and an external component. That internal, like if I'm looking to promote someone, maybe I have an employee already in a different position that could take it. But externally, if I'm looking to hire someone, maybe I have an employee who knows somebody who's looking for a job.
Well, exactly. And I mean, for the most part, you're gonna get one shot at recommending anyone, and they're gonna judge you. So if you're gonna recommend somebody, you better make sure they're actually solid, right?
Yeah, that is a reflection on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you recommend someone and they suck, man,
Yeah,
let
so
me
if
tell you.
somebody, if even if one of your friends comes up and is like, "Hey, I need you to throw in a good word for me," right? It's okay to fib to them later and be like, "Hey, man, I fought for you, right? I put in the good word."
I fought for you, Matt. I put in a good word.
I know, it's weird. Some other evaluation tactics. Obviously, we talked about interviews, tests, reference checks, and we get
Well,
down to one that's changing.
well, if I weigh in real quick, the
Yeah.
first one, the preliminary screening, you
Yeah.
know, I can tell you, I've sat on a lot of hiring committees, and you put out, you put together a nice job description, job specification, send it out there, so everyone knows, oh, they're looking for someone who has a master's degree and 10 years of experience, and you will get applications back for someone who has no degree and 1 year experience. And so there is one of the first thing you do is the preliminary screening. You get rid of the people who are just wildly unqualified, and then you progress to the next stage where you start talking to candidates. So that preliminary screening is actually one of the big parts of hiring.
Yeah. And not just that part, but if there's just such horrible errors, especially if it's a typed resume, things of that nature, which is why we have Compass here to try to help reduce it.
Yeah.
Having somebody look at it is great, but it's not foolproof. As many people as you can to have look at your stuff.
Yeah.
Really good. There's some goals when you have orientation. One, reduce anxiety. The first day anywhere is overwhelming. Doesn't matter how welcoming everybody is, it's overwhelming. It can be so overwhelming that people just might not come back.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's very few things that I ever do that are more intimidating than walking into a new place of employment the first time. Like, I'm the new guy. It's my first day at work. I've got on my uniform, but I don't really know much. The less I know, the more nervous I am. So orientation is to reduce that insecurity when you come in so that you can perform. That all that time that you have to learn where things are, you have to learn procedures. The more that you handle in orientation, the more productive work you're going to get from the employee when they actually show up to work.
Yeah. Well, and this orientation should really be a realistic view of everything that's going to be expected, right? And from person to person that you orient, it should be very consistent here.
Yeah, and consistency, but there's also the aspect that everybody has different things that they're concerned with. So and this is what I mean. From orientation, we tend to think of orientation from the point of view, I am the employer, this is what I need my employees to know.
Yeah.
It's also useful to think of it, what does the employee want to know?
Yeah.
Because you want your employee to know what the task is they're going to be doing and where the tools are. You know what the employee wants to know? What time do I get lunch? What day is payday? So you also have to think about those things when you're doing orientation, about that. It's not that if our goal is to make them more efficient workers, we need to think about them as what are the things they're concerned about.
Yeah. What are the things that during your day that you worry about?
Yeah.
I mean,
it says an overview of the hotel, show the layout of the hotel, if they have to change uniforms, where is the locker room?
Yeah.
Things like that. Any sort of important policy.
Compensation.
Pay is always important.
Fringe benefits are important.
Yeah.
So if you work for a chain hotel, typically you're going to get friends and family discount where you can get hotel rooms at ridiculously cheaper prices other places.
Again, the appropriate time to talk about this is in orientation.
Yeah.
Safety issues. How are you going to deal with safety issues and problems and reporting? Because what you want, the worst thing in the world is to have someone injured and then someone goes, where's the first aid kit? Who do I call?
Yeah.
You need to have that cleared out before it ever happens.
Well, and these are things that you shouldn't just do on week one. You should go back and refresh some of
Right.
these things
But we should
a
address
couple
these in
weeks later
orientation.
too. Yeah. Property tours. And again, you go to a place like Sea Island, and if they were to take you around to all the different properties, just looking through the cloister, I'd be completely lost in the basement.
Well, also a thing that's important is like, most of my experience working in resorts and hotels, I was a cook. And so, I'm in my whites and everything, and I look like a cook, but I can't tell you how many times I've been, going to a catered event or something on another part of the property, and a guest stops me and asks, "Pardon me, can you tell me how to get to the spa? Or can you tell me how?" And it's like, so you are still an employee of the property, and so even if your position isn't primarily guest interaction, you're still going to interact with guests. And even if you are a front desk person, someone's going to ask you about, the wine list, or they're going to ask you about the golf course or something. So you need to know those things.
Having a solid knowledge of all the things that are available where you're at in the surrounding areas is pretty.
And we do a terrible, terrible job about orientation in the hospitality industry. This is one of my soapboxes I like to get up on. The way we typically do it is the magic apron, which is, you go in your first day, here's your apron, go follow that guy around. He'll show you what to do. And the magic apron teaches you how to be an employee. And that is a terrible, terrible. It doesn't address the anxiety. It doesn't tell them any of the specifics I need to know.
It makes it all worse. Because you hand them off to Crazy Carl, and you're going to get what you're going to get.
And that person is going to learn the procedure from Crazy Carl.
Yeah.
And so they're going to do it the way he does it.
Yeah. Some things, of course, we need to train the trainer. If you want to go into HR, you're going to have to continually learn all the new methods, all the new laws, everything else that's coming up. You're going to have to continually be trained.
Yeah.
Right. Group training, individual training, it's exactly what it says, right? You get a group of people coming in, or a topic like sexual harassment training.
Yeah, sexual harassment
tends to be a big group training thing.
Everybody's going to get together. We're going to say, these are our policies. This is how you're going to handle it. But individual training, maybe, you have someone coming in who's, maybe we're going to be doing Hilton is now providing in-room fitness equipment in certain hotels. And so someone's going to have to be trained on how do we set that up? How do we maintain it? It's probably going to be one person who's going to have that training.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're thinking about HR in action, doing the performance evals is kind of important. And some of it's setting goals.
Yeah.
And those have to be done right. So the whole point of setting goals is to help improve morale, assure some like legal compliance and stuff like that. And also to help the employee realize when they're going to be eligible for pay raises and promotions, they have to do certain things to get to those areas.
The indicators for job satisfaction for most people in this scene is not driven by money. It's driven by how they feel about the importance of their job and if they're appreciated in it. And so setting a goal, a performance goal, we want you to get to this point. People like jobs that are challenging, now not overwhelming, but ones where they feel like they're accomplishing something. So setting an appropriate goal, like you said, improves morale.
It really does. And that's all part of HR, is to help develop all those policies and things and procedures that keep the morale up. Compensation. We hit on this earlier. There's direct compensation. That's you getting paid. That's your salary, your bonus, your wages, your commissions, however they phrase it.
Yeah.
But you cannot forget when you're sitting there and you're coming up with an idea to try to hire people, those indirect compensations matter. Health insurance availability, paid vacation, right? People sit there and they'll consider that. I mean, there's two jobs. One pays a little bit more than the other, but one has health care and it pays less. I might do the one with healthcare.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty big financial commitment. But as a company, if you do healthcare en masse, you get cheaper rates to pass down onto your employees.
And there are all sorts of types of benefits and compensation. You can talk about one of the things is college professors. And I just saw this for Dolly. Did you see the news about Dollywood today?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dolly
So
Parton.
Dollywood,
amazing.
Yeah, Dollywood for all employees, part-time employees, full-time employees, any employee there, they are providing educational reimbursement. So if you want to go to college, they will pay for it starting on day one of your employment.
Yeah.
So like you can get a job at Dollywood tomorrow and Dollywood will pay for you to go to college, all expenses covered.
Yeah.
That's compensation. Now it's not wages, but that's a benefit.
That is, it really is. And that kind of leads into like employee retention a little bit. People who feel like they're appreciated and compensated enough tend to stick around.
Yeah, if you ever go, you're walking through a business and you see employee of the month, advisor of the year, something like that.
Yeah.
That is human resources. That's a morale building. It's a retention thing. It's giving attention to people who are good at their job because you want to keep those good employees. So anything we can do along those lines of trying to keep people motivated and happy in their job, that's also part of human resources charge.
Well, that's kind of why we moved away more and more from a traditional leadership style to a contemporary where we're empowering our employees too.
So what's the difference between directing and empowerment?
Do this.
This because I told you to, and I am your boss.
Because I said so.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we can all think back to when our parents probably said that to us at least once.
Yeah.
Because I said so. And the contemporary, and we talked about this, a lot in class, is that making employees feel like they have a vested ability to make decisions that benefit the company.
Yeah, give them additional skills, and with those skills, give them additional responsibility. Let them find solutions to their problems.
Yeah, and when they mess up, don't freak out.
That's a big important part of empowerment. Yeah. Is that with that increased responsibility, it's a learning process.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. Bless you. Speaking of,
pardon me.
There's termination, right? I mean, we're kind of breezing through a little, but voluntary termination when the employee decides to leave for their own reasons.
Yeah, I've had enough of
this. Don't be a jerk. I can't. Right, an employee leaves, regardless. Thank them. Yeah. Tell them that you're gonna miss them.
Wish them well on their future endeavors.
Especially if they're a great employee. There might be one that leaves where you're high-fiving each other after they walk out the door, but still, handle it all with grace. Don't take it personally. It's not people have to do what's best for them. Involuntary termination, you fired somebody.
Yeah.
Make sure you cover your bases.
This is where human resources becomes very important.
Even at an at-will state, where you can hire and fire people at any given moment, you want to still cover your bases.
Yeah.
Right.
Human resources is the expert on employment law. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to terminate someone, you want them involved to make sure that you're doing everything legally and fairly and properly.
Yeah. Some other activities, help protect the safety and health of employees, right? Some of that's just helping them deal with stress, and people don't realize that mental health is such a key portion of your own health care and helping your employees out. If they're stressed, how are they going to act around customers?
Lots of employers have health screenings and health fairs.
Yeah,
it's part of the job.
Develop procedures to address workplace violence, right? Housekeeping, bloodborne illnesses, those type of things, that type of training, right? for work quality, right? Professional development activities, cultural diversity initiatives, quality improvement programs, all of that's going to matter.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get into your succession planning. Succession planning is based on the book, a 6-step process. There's sometimes 7 where it's a continuous cycle where you're sitting there and you're, reevaluating, but you want to identify positions to be addressed in succession planning.
Mhm.
So think about your vision. Well, if you're going to promote your front desk supervisor to front desk manager, well, you should probably have in mind which front desk associate might be a good fit to be, lack of better terms, groomed for that next
Yeah,
position.
who's going to fill in? Who's in the pipeline?
Yeah, exactly. And that goes all the way up. Even the GM, right? If you're afraid of being replaced, well, it's kind of
every
your own
position,
issue.
there should always be someone who is trained
Yeah.
who can step in when
Well,
necessary.
that helps out when you go on vacation and stuff like that too. Like people are like, oh, well, they might find out that I'm disposable. Guess what? Everybody is. No one is essential to anything because there's always somebody else who can step up. Right.
But what you want to do is for those key positions, you want to have someone, to ensure continuity and smoothness in the workforce. You want to have someone who's already trained, who's at least passingly familiar with the skills and requirements of the position. There's nothing worse than being thrown into a position where you don't know what is needed, what's required, and you have to figure it out in the moment with the work pressure on you. It's much, you're much better off if you've been groomed and prepared for it.
Yeah. And part of that's figuring out what kind of competencies we need. So we might be like, all right, well, we're going to train Robbie in this. Right. And
you're going to be
Matt for this path. So we're going to make sure they do this training. Right. Going through that training, you might have to recruit external staff and training them for those future positions. Right.
Right. You may not have anyone in-house.
Yeah. There's a lot of planning involved. Right. You can't just decide, well, we're just going to do this and we'll just throw it together. You got to be thoughtful, mindful of what you're doing and why.
But also, we invest in professional development for our employees. It's like, we don't have anyone currently who has, the right qualifications, the right certification, or the right education level. A wise employer, we start looking at that. It's like, well, maybe we should make the investment. Maybe we should, provide this training. Maybe we should provide, pay for this certification to get what we need to develop.
And then of course you're going to have to continually monitor and revise. I mean, no plan is ever perfect and no plan lasts the test of time. It's going to have to be changed up. There's going to be situations that are going to come up that you're not going to think about, and that's okay. Right. End of the day, HR is a very rapidly changing position all the time. New laws can happen at any moment that change things. Situations may come up where you have to make decisions and new policies. Technology changes so quickly too that everything has kind of changed since the first job we've had. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, from watching a VHS on a small, like 13-inch TV in the basement of Perkins Family Bakery, and restaurant, things have changed a little bit. I hope.
Pretty high tech there, man.
Yeah. It was pretty awesome. They had Freddy Krueger and Jason and all them doing knife safety. I still got a scar across my finger from where I almost chopped it off. So anyways, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Robertson.
My pleasure.
And I hope that you enjoy your day. Bye.
Bye.